I used to be a Weird Warriors kid. Now I'm a Weird Warriors adult. Each week I'm discussing a chapter of the iconic books by Aaron Hunter. My name is Charlie, and in today's episode, I will be talking about Prophecies Begin, Book 2, Fire and Ice, Chapter 4. Join me on this adventure into the world of warrior cats. Before I dive into today's episode, I have a few housekeeping things to talk about, as well as just reminding you that if you would like to get access to extended spoiler versions of episodes and the comment section and bonus episodes behind the scenes and Warrior Cats news types of coverage, then you can subscribe on Substack for just $5 a month. So as far as little housekeeping things go, number one, if you're watching the video version of this podcast, you may notice I have a new thing on my desk here, which is this black cat-shaped, I think it's supposed to be a pot for a plant, but I'm going to use it just for pencils or things on my desk. But I went to one of those fun ceramics places where you can pick out a thing they already have. I did not shape this into how it is. It was already like this. I just painted it. And you paint it, and then they fire it in a kiln, and then you come back later and pick it up. And I really like how it turned out. It's just plain black, but on the bottom, I put a little red heart. And yeah, I just wanted something that reminds me of Lucky to add to my desk here. And also, I didn't realize till I got it back, but it actually looks like the warrior cats symbols for each clan, which I really like. So it's like that same silhouette. Pretty cool. Also, if you're watching, you might notice that some of my dolls are a little tipped over on my doll shelf in the background, although they might be blocked by my bookshelf on the side here, but it might look a little more disheveled than usual because Lucky has recently gotten into the habit of jumping on there and knocking the dolls down. With how hot it's been lately, I had a fan going that was moving a little fringe doll that I had, and Lucky tried attacking that and was freaking out about seeing that move around, and I removed that from the situation and hid it. But ever since then, Lucky wanted to jump on the shelves, which was a new development because he didn't really attack the dolls very much. So I kind of got tired of setting them back up and fixing it every time that would happen. He hasn't really done it again recently, but that's mostly because I've tried to keep him out of this room, especially unattended most of the time. So I don't know. I don't want to shut Lucky out of here because I love him and I want him to be involved and be included in this podcast and be able to hang out with us. But I also want to protect my collection. So I'm trying to figure out next steps. It might disappear from the background of this podcast for a while. I was trying to search for a display case that is clear and has doors, but most of those are glass, and I'd rather have something like acrylic because having a giant glass case sounds scary to me. It could break, it would be really heavy, it'd be hard to move in and out of this apartment. So I don't know. Anyway, I can talk more about that type of stuff on my doll channel eventually, but since it is in the background of this podcast. I just thought it'd be worth mentioning in case anyone was curious about that. And then another thing I wanted to mention is for anyone who's not yet subscribed, you missed out on my bonus episodes talking about Warrior Cat's TV show news with the announcement of the show being on Disney Plus and Disney Channel in 2028. And they released some official art for Warrior Cats that we don't know what it's going to be used for. And we also got a still image of the TV show art that looks really cool. So I reacted to all of that and discussed it in depth on this podcast in the bonus episodes that recently came out. So you should definitely subscribe just to check those out. But if you don't want to subscribe, that's okay. I'm planning on soon making a free summary of what I discussed in those bonus episodes on my Lots of Love YouTube channel, which is my doll collecting YouTube channel. So it's all kind of interwoven. I'm trying to cross promote, but also just make this information accessible to a wider audience and also draw new listeners to this podcast, because I feel like it'll be easier for people to find this podcast if they find a video on YouTube of me talking about Warriors news. I'm also trying to start up an Instagram account for this podcast to promote it, but promoting is my least favorite part of all of this. I like the creating part. That's why I do this. I don't want to promote and market and all of that stuff. That part is tedious and boring to me. I also don't really want to be using Instagram, partially because I don't want to support Meta, and partially because using Instagram is bad for my mental health. But anyway, that's a whole other tangent. The point is, I'm trying to expand my horizons, or however you would describe what I'm doing. Just trying to draw more people, not only to my content, but to Warrior Cats, because I think it's a franchise that deserves more fans. And another cool Warriors related thing that I became aware of recently was the YouTuber Bright Guardian Akira, whose videos I discussed in some of my bonus episodes, came out with an official interview video of questions and answers with the artist of the official Warrior Cats art that came out. And the artist's name is Johanna Tarkella, or Johis for short. And it's a really cool video. I think it's awesome that Akira was able to interview Johis, and her answers about the art are very interesting. And I just love that type of behind the scenes insight and things about creators and stuff like that. So I will link that in today's episode notes and description if you want to check that out. And once I come out with that video on my Lots of Love channel of summarizing all of this, then I'll link that here as well. But now let's actually get on to Chapter 4 of Fire and Ice. So the chapter begins with Graystripe and Fireheart heading out of ThunderClan camp to go on their mission to find WindClan. And they run into Whitestorm, who is leading Sandpaw and Running Wind into the forest for their dawn patrol. And Whitestorm says, "I hear you two are going on a mission." And Fireheart says, "Yes." And Whitestorm says, "Then may you have StarClan's protection," he meowed gravely. That actually sounds kind of ominous. It almost seems like he's genuinely worried about their safety. Of course he's worried about their safety, but in an intense way here. And Sandpaw says, "What for? You off to catch voles?" Sandpaw still being a jerk to Fireheart, which is making me curious how she'll be portrayed in the TV show. Are they going to make her really whiny and really annoying, or are they just going to make her jealous and being kind of rude? Are they going to make her like the typical mean popular girl in high school movies? Are they going to make her more standoffish and just making side comments here and there. Like, I'm very curious. I feel like I would portray her not as like the typical mean girl stereotype and not really whiny, just like using a regular tone of voice but being a little rude. Like, I don't want to hate Sandpaw when watching the TV show. Definitely not in the same way that we hate Darkstripe and Longtail because they're really annoying. More just so being a little irritated by her / amused. And I think it's a careful balance of how you would portray that. But Running Wind whispers something to Sandpaw, and the contempt in her green eyes switched to guarded curiosity. Now I'm surprised it says curiosity instead of jealousy, and that makes me curious what Running Wind whispered to her. Because does he know what the mission is, and did he tell her, or did he just say they're going on a mission for Blue Star? Or, I don't know. Also, does Whitestorm know what their mission is? Because it sounds like he just heard that they're going on a mission, not what it is. But I feel like they do know what it is. But who told them? You know, like, I really feel like this should have been a top secret mission. But anyway, Fireheart and Graystripe hurry onward, following the route through the forest to Four Trees, and they pause at the top of a steep slope on the far side of the clearing. I guess this is the Four Trees clearing. I don't know. I'm looking back and forth from the map to the description. I don't really see a steep slope, but also every time ThunderClan goes to Four Trees, they talk about stopping at the top of a steep slope before descending down to Four Trees. Maybe they're on a steep slope on the other side because it says on the far side of the oak-shaded clearing. But Graystripe asks, is it always windy up here? Fluffing out his thick fur against the blast of cold air that swept across the uplands. So if they're in the uplands, I feel like that means they're already in WindClan territory. If they're in WindClan territory, how would they be shaded by oaks? And Fireheart says, I suppose there aren't any trees to block it. This was WindClan's territory. Okay, so they are in WindClan's territory, but somehow they're still in an oak-shaded clearing. It's just a little confusing to me, but that's okay. Moving on. Fireheart detects a scent that shouldn't be there, and he asks Graystripe if he smells RiverClan warriors, and Graystripe says no. And Fireheart says they might want to make the most of WindClan's absence, especially since they know WindClan will be back soon. And when I read that, I was thinking, wait, how would they know WindClan will be back soon? And I had to look back on page 29, chapter 2, which is during the gathering. And yes, Blue Star did straight up say, WindClan must be found and brought home. Until then, no clan should hunt in their territory. So I guess it wouldn't be a top secret mission. All the clans know that Blue Star wants someone to go and find WindClan and bring them home, and that no one should be hunting there until then. But, like Fireheart is saying, since they know WindClan will be back soon, they might as well get whatever prey they can before then. But I don't know. I had gotten the sense after reading the Gathering chapter that the agreement was they would find WindClan and bring them back, but not necessarily that it would be super soon. It would be like a long-term plan. Like, we should be working on this all together. We should be figuring out this solution or something. I don't know. Just because before Blue Star said that, Nightpelt said, very well, Blue Star, we will allow WindClan to return. Like, it just feels like a more long-term thing to me that this was their plan. But no, literally the next morning, Blue Star is sending them on a mission to get WindClan. So Blue Star is very on top of it. She says a plan and she acts on it. And I think that's great. That's a great way for a leader to be, is to say what their plan is and then do it. So now that's finally cleared up for me. This doesn't need to be a secret. Everyone knows Blue Star is probably sending someone right now to go do that, which actually you'd think RiverClan would be even more careful in this chapter of looking around, making sure no one's following them. And maybe they are, but they don't really mention that here. So then the scent of RiverClan becomes more fresh, and now Graystripe can smell it. So I think it's interesting that Fireheart was able to detect the scent faster than Graystripe. And Fireheart and Graystripe crouch behind some heather, and Graystripe lifts his dark gray head to peer over the bushes, and I'm just picturing Graystripe's little head peeking over the bushes, like looking so cute. And Fireheart looks up over the bushes as well, and they can both see that 4 RiverClan warriors were chasing a rabbit, one of them being Blackclaw, who Fireheart recognizes from the gathering. The smoky black warrior pounces at the rabbit, but it says the rabbit must have made it to the safety of her warren. Now, I think it's interesting that the narrator refers to the rabbit as her. I feel like most of the time the prey is referred to by it instead of him or her, and this is less objectifying than using it, which then might make the reader have more pity for the prey, which I think we should not objectify animals, but for the sake of this story, since it's the food of the cats and they're kind of separating emotion and empathy from their own prey, because otherwise this might be quite heartbreaking for kids reading the books of like, oh my god, they're murdering these innocent animals every day. I feel like it would make more sense to consistently use it for all of the prey. And I'm wondering with this how it will be portrayed in the TV show, because it's kind of grim that they're hunting prey. So we'll see how they make it look in the show. I feel like that would be a challenge. Also, it says her warren. I guess that's what a rabbit home is called, but I want to look that up. Rabbit warren. Skip the AI overview. Britannica Kids, Rabbit Warren. European rabbits are sociable creatures. They form colonies and burrows called warrens. Most of the passages are interconnected and have side pockets in which individual families live. The main warren has 2 or more entrances. If an enemy comes in one door, the rabbits can run out through another. Usually, the entrances are behind the concealing protection of a bush or rock. It's really interesting. I didn't realize multiple rabbit families share the same tunnels or warrens. It's really cool and smart that they have multiple entrances to escape. And Fireheart can smell the terrified rabbit coming nearer, and he can hear the RiverClan paw steps approaching. And Graystripe says, "Follow me, I smell badgers this way." Now this time, Graystripe is the first to smell something. I don't know if Fireheart couldn't smell the smell of the badgers, or if he did smell it and just didn't think anything of it because he hasn't smelled badgers before. But Fireheart asks if it's safe because he's heard the story of how Halftail had lost his tail in a fight with a bad-tempered old Brock. Now, a few things here. One, have we heard that that's the story of how Halftail lost his tail before? I feel like maybe we have, but I didn't remember that that's how it happened. And the second thing, what's a Brock? Is that a word for a badger? So let me look that up. Badger Brock. Skipping the AI overview, Tolkien Gateway Wiki, Badger Brock. Badger Brock was an individual of the Badger folk mentioned only in Hobbit verse. Okay, let's try a different website. Brock, definition and meaning, Merriam-Webster. British for badger. Etymology, Middle English from Old English brock, B-R-O-C, of Celtic origin, akin to Welsh, broch, B-R-O-C-H, badger. But in here it's spelled B-R-O-C-K, which is just making me think of Brock from Pokemon. So I guess he's named after badgers. Okay. Graystripe tells Fireheart not to worry. The scent is strong but stale. There must be an old set near here, which I guess a set is what badger homes are called. Fireheart sniffs and he can smell a strong, almost fox-like scent. And I was trying to remember if Fireheart even knows what fox smells like, but I think in book 1, Graystripe and Fireheart encountered a fox. And Fireheart follows Graystripe to the badger set, and they hide down inside of the sandy hole, and they can hear RiverClan paw steps thudding overhead. And then one of them yowls, "Badger set," and another voice asks, "Is it abandoned? The rabbit may be hiding inside." And of course, Fireheart is worrying, oh my gosh, they're going to come in here and find us. And the two warriors are preparing for battle. But then Black Claw says, wait, the scent leads this way. And the paw steps fade away. And they wait a little longer and then finally come outside, and RiverClan is nowhere to be found. And Fireheart says we should look for the WindClan camp. It'll be the best place to pick up their scent. That's a really good idea. So they find a large rock, and Graystripe decides to climb up it and look around since he can blend in with the gray rock. And when he comes back down, he says he saw a hollow, which is probably where WindClan's camp is, sheltered from the wind. And so they decide to go check it out. To Fireheart, it looked as if a StarClan warrior had reached down from the sky, scooped a pawful of peat from the plateau, and replaced it with a thick tangle of gorse that grew almost to the level of the ground on either side. And Fireheart can smell many scents of different WindClan cats and fresh kill that had long since become crow food. This had to be the abandoned camp. Oh yeah, also before I keep going with that, one note I had was, how did the RiverClan warriors recognize the scent of the badger set and identify it as such? Because I don't know if there are badgers in RiverClan, but anyway, that's just a small detail. But back to the camp. They look around, they see tufts of fur and spatters of blood from the battle. Graystripe is impressed that Broken Star managed to drive WindClan out of such a well-protected place. And I've wondered about that too, like, how were they so easily able to attack WindClan and scare them out? You'd think they would fight back and defend themselves, and especially with how weak ShadowClan turned out to be, since a lot of the apprentices were actually kits who were too young, and a lot of the warriors actually resented and feared Broken Star, and there was only a core group of elite warriors who supported him. You'd think WindClan would have been able to put up enough of a fight to protect their camp. And their camp is surrounded by these thorns and everything that it said as they were entering the camp, Graystripe was cursing as thorns snagged his ears. And I just think it's funny picturing Graystripe cursing. But actually, it does say here that Fireheart says it looks like they put up a good fight. So I think WindClan did put up a good fight, but I just think they could have stayed. But now that they're really familiar with that smell of WindClan, and it's strongest from the location where they were driven out, and that can lead them to where they went, they start following the trail of the cats exiting WindClan camp and that fear scent that they can smell. And they go through a narrow gap in the gorse, and Graystripe grumbles, WindClan cats must be even smaller than I remember, as they squeeze through. It says 2 moons of rain and wind had failed to wash away the signs of suffering. Wow. So that's giving us information that it's been 2 months, but also it's just showing how bad this battle was, that they can still see and smell the signs of the suffering. Like, that's horrible. And Fireheart is feeling angry about this injustice as he hurries after Graystripe. It says the trail led them to the far edge of the uplands, and in front of them they can see the 2-leg farmland, and they can also see further in the distance where the sun was setting high stones. And Fireheart wonders if Nightpelt is there yet. And Graystripe says we don't want to find him down there, flicking his tail towards the 2-leg land. And he says it was hard enough with the two legs, rats, and dogs. And Fireheart remembers the battle with the rats where Blue Star lost a life. And Graystripe asks, do you think we'll find any trace of Ravenpaw? Fireheart says, I hope so. Me too, Fireheart, me too. They continue to follow the trail of the Wind Clan scent, which takes them into a grassy field, past a hedgerow, and onto a two-leg path, or a sidewalk, through a small copse of trees. Now, this is another word I want to look up. Copse. C-O-P-S-E. Merriam-Webster. A thicket, grove, or growth of small trees. Okay. And they can see sun-bleached prey bones and mossy bedding, and they gather that this must be where Wind Clan settled. But the scent is old, so what could have made them leave? They follow the trail to a thick hedge, and they wriggle through onto a grass verge where there is a narrow ditch and a wide earth track. Now I'm really trying to picture, what is this? Is the grass verge a backyard? But what's the ditch and what's the wide earth track? And I keep looking at the map and trying to see what this is, but it just looks like the farmland. So I don't know. I mean, it is nearing winter, so maybe the wide earth track is like really a wide earth track, and it's like the cornfield or something, but without any plants, just an open field of dirt. Maybe that's what it is. And past Graystripe, Fireheart can see the silhouette of the two-leg house, realizing they must be near Barley's territory. And Graystripe says that's where those dogs live. And they remember that Barley warned them that the dogs are let loose at night, and the sun is almost fully set, so they need to hurry. And they wonder if the dogs chased Wind Clan out of the woods. Fireheart worries and asks Graystripe, do you think Ravenpaw found Barley? And Graystripe says, why not? We made it this far. In that sentence, I'm having trouble knowing which word to emphasize, because there's no word that's italicized. So is it we made it this far, or we made it this far, or we made it this far? I don't know. But he says, don't underestimate him. Remember the time Tiger Claw sent him to Snake Rocks? He came back with an adder. And Fireheart warmly remembers that time, which is a great moment for Ravenpaw. And a dog barks at them from inside the two-leg nest, but the sound fades into the distance as they keep going forward. It gets a lot colder now that the sun has set, and frost begins to form on the grass. Graystripe asks if they should keep going, worrying that the trail will lead them directly to Highstones, where Nightpelt definitely is by now. But Fireheart says they should keep going, and the scent leads them to a thunder path, which was making me worried because Fireheart recently had a nightmare about the thunder path, but it doesn't mention him thinking about the nightmare at all here. And they find the spot where Wind Clan sheltered. And Graystripe says this was probably the first time most of them had seen the thunder path. And Fireheart is surprised by this. And he asks, didn't they patrol their borders? And I was wondering about that and looked at the map, and yes, a thunder path borders their territory. So how would they have never seen the thunder path before? But Graystripe says, you've seen their territory. It's pretty wild and barren, and the prey's not easy to catch. I guess they never thought any of the other clans would bother hunting here. After all, River Clan has their river, and in a good year, our forests are filled with prey, so no cat needs their skinny rabbits. But still, you'd think they'd patrol their territory and their borders, although looking at the map, the border just separates them from Highstones. But still, Shadow Clan could cross that thunder path. It'd be a long journey, but they could cross the thunder path and sneak into Wind Clan camp, which is exactly what they did and drove them out. So I guess hindsight is 2020, but still, before that, like, the clans have existed for generations. Are you telling me that no clan has ever tried to attack Wind Clan? You'd think they'd be patrolling their territory, right? I mean, maybe they did in past generations and that's just been forgotten, and the more recent generations just haven't bothered with protecting their territory like that. But still, you'd think being in their territory, they'd wander around and just be curious and look at the Thunder Path at least. Maybe they really stick to the center of their territory because also on the edge of their territory are the dogs. So maybe they really have more territory than they explore. But also, if they never really patrolled their borders, at least recently, that makes more sense of why they were driven out by Shadow Clan. I mean, they could still be strong, formidable warriors, but without having experience of patrolling and being on guard for an attack or an invasion, it makes sense that they would be driven out. But they smell around, wondering if Wind Clan would have doubled back or gone in a different direction, or if they crossed the Thunder Path, which is what I'm assuming is what happened. It says, surely they couldn't have lost the trail now after coming so far. And that's the end of chapter 4. Now I do want to mention a couple other things that I'll keep just in the spoiler version because they are spoilery, but things that I thought of during this chapter. But anyways, otherwise, that is pretty much everything for today's episode. Remember to subscribe on Substack for just $5 a month to be able to see those bonus episodes and other extra things. And tell your friends about this podcast. Let's get excited for the Warrior Cats TV show coming out in 2028. And let's look forward to Chapter 5 of Fire and Ice. I'll see you in the next one. This has been Into the World of Warrior Cats.